Before beginning the homily, I have a little dilemma. I'm very excited and happy for the Eddies as they will go into the state finals next week. The problem is they're playing my alma mater. So I guess I better, if I'm smart, go for the Eddies, huh? And not for the Cougars of Grand Rapids. But anyway, we're very happy for our team and that it's, it's interesting to just go on a little bit about them. My first time in Edwardsburg was years ago, and before Father Adlo was Father Bill. And he asked me to help on a weekend, and I came through. It's the first time I'd ever been to Edwardsburg. Didn't even know it existed. And I was driving, and I saw the people were just really excited. And I go, what's going on here? I mean, it can't be a whole lot of excitement in Edwardsburg. And then they were, and I finally asked, what's all the excitement about? He says, we won a football game. And apparently there had been a drought of many, many losses at that time. And they hadn't won a game in years. And so I felt maybe I had something to do with that, to bring luck to Edwardsburg. Now I'm here and you're going state champs. You can't beat it. In the gospel today, we meet three servants who've been given some talents. Now the talents have been described as being a very large amount of money. Some authors, scripture scholars say it would be equivalent to $1 million today. And they were given this talent to take care of until the king returned. And so we have three servants that get this. Two of them do the right thing as far as the parable goes. They multiplied it. The last one didn't. Now the tendency is to reflect on the last one, the last person, to reflect that, that person is going to be, as the end of the gospel so beautifully put it, really nice, wailing and grinding of teeth. They're going to be doing that. And yet, I think the emphasis should be on the first two servants. The emphasis on them, because what they're doing is they got talent, okay, if we can use that term as we understand it, good actions, gifts that we have, and they used it. And they used it so well that they multiplied it. And so I think the gospel, instead of a condemnation, is really an affirmation. That the Lord is affirming the fact that if we have a talent, let's use it. Let's recognize that we have talents. Now, we Catholics aren't always good at recognizing our own talents. I don't know if it's part of our Catholic DNA or not. But if I were to sit here with this community and say to you, folks, for the next 5 minutes, would you spend some time telling me about your positive characteristics? I think we'd sit 5 minutes in silence. We're just not used to sharing what we do well, what we give. And so there might be silence. But if I, on the other hand, would say, okay, let's sit here and talk about our negative stuff, your spouses would enter right away, but there's a tendency to always reflect on the negative instead of the positive. And I think Jesus today is saying, let's be positive. Let's recognize that they had gifts and talents, and they used those gifts and talents. And sometimes we don't affirm, sometimes talents won't happen. Reminds me of a story that was told about an old man who approached a 19th century artist named Daniel Gabriel Rossetti. He brought his portfolio of sketches and asked the great artist to evaluate them, to look at them and see, do they have any worth? So Rossetti agreed. And he carefully looked through the old man's profile. Then he closed it and gently but firmly informed the old man that the pictures really had little value. They weren't very good at all. The old man, of course, was discouraged, but he asked Rossetti one more favor. He said, would you look at a set of drawings done by a young student? Because I would like to have them evaluated as well. So Rossetti agreed, and he began to go through the second portfolio. And as he did, he grew in enthusiasm. He says, these are excellent. They show real promise. This student should be encouraged. Who is he? Is he your son? No, the old man said sadly, these are my pictures, which I drew 40 years ago. I only wish that I could have heard you, your affirmation then, because without it, I gave in to discouragement. I gave up way too soon. And I think that's so true, that sometimes we don't affirm enough. We don't recognize enough the gifts that we have. We all have gifts. We all have talents. There's no ungifted person present here this morning. There's no person here in this church today who does not have some talent that has been given to them by God. As Catholics, I think we don't often recognize that enough. We speak so much of humility, and we speak so much of, you should be quiet, and yet I think, we should affirm the gifts that we have, not only and affirm them, but to use those gifts, to share those gifts, not to do what the last servant did and bury him. They should be invested. And I think that's so important. Several years ago, when I was a young priest, and I say several years ago, I was working in a predominantly African-American parish in West Oakland, California. Very difficult community to live in. But it was a small parish, but a faith community that was very much alive and very strong. I often wondered what was the secret of that community, because they were alive. It was a joy to go in there and to celebrate Eucharist with them. And at the front entrance of the church, I noticed right away that there was a great big board, and I may have told this story, but there was a great big board, and on it was pictures of the parishioners. And underneath each picture of the parishioner was a little card that described their ministry, their gift, their talent. And it went across the board, from the usuals to, helping at the altar, lectors, Eucharistic ministers, ushers. But then there were others that said, I pray. I can't come and do a lot of stuff, but I pray for the community. Others said, I take care of this elderly person. I help this person to get to their medical procedures. I work helping somebody at home who needs a little special help. I work in the community in some very important programs. It went on and on. To me, it said right away why there was life in that parish, because people recognized they were gifted and they were willing to share their gift. And it wasn't an overwhelming amount of time that they had to share their gift, but each gift made that community more alive. As I enter my 5th month here as your pastor here at Our Lady of the Lake, I think it's important that I as a pastor affirm the many wonderful talents that I've seen in this community. This community is alive. Many beautiful outreach programs that you have. Look at the marvelous facilities that you've been able to create. The warmness of welcome that everyone experiences when they walk into our doors. All of those are talents and gifts that you have shared. Your love and care for your parish is evident in so many ways. I thank all of you who have not buried your treasure and talent, but rather invested it in service to your parish, service to your families, and service to your communities. No talent, believe me, is insignificant. When I look back at my own vocation, I was never really thinking seriously of becoming a priest because I wasn't the brightest bulb in the room. I didn't do very well academically, and so I decided I probably never would be a priest, that I would looking at perhaps, full-time in religious life as a brother. And one day I sat down with a Jesuit priest, and he looked at me one time and he said, Bob, what the heck, why aren't you studying for the priesthood? I said, I'm not smart enough. Well, I can't tell you the word he used, okay? But he told me, he says, I think you can do it. And that little push from him made me think, well, maybe I can. And I was able to, because of God's goodness only, I was able to do both philosophy and theology in 4 years. And so I wasn't as dumb as I thought. And sometimes, it's that little encouragement that we can get that helps us to use our talents and give it. The grace that I was given to learn Spanish has helped me tremendously to do a lot of outreach that I would never have been able to do. And the same kind of experience I had, I took the first class in Spanish in Ecuador, and the teachers got together and said, how do we tell this nice young man that he's wasting his time? So one of the teachers said, no, he's motivated, he wants to be here, he wants to learn it, and so put him in my class. And so she terrorized me for the next 6 weeks, and it worked. I was able to, the German in me sort of said, okay, let's go to war, two of us, and it worked out that I was able to learn it. And but if she hadn't encouraged me, if she hadn't pushed me, that would have never happened. And I think that's what God says to us. Don't bury our treasures. Recognize them. Use them for the good of the church. Do not be afraid to invest our talents. If you do, they will bless you in return and bless others. And we will hear the words that were spoken so beautifully in the gospel today. Well done, good and faithful servant. Come into my master's joy.